Ours is a service of memory, a service of love, a service of trust. Dearly beloveds, welcome to this sanctuary as we gather to celebrate the life and mourn the death of Robert MacPhail, whom we knew as Bob. We gather to give thanks for the miracle of Bob's life, to honor his visible and invisible legacy, to tell stories, to weep and laugh, and to remember the love that remains with us and always will. So let this be an hour of memory and our simple rites here today, a testimony to the power of love, which shall be finally stronger than sorrow or parting. Welcome to our service this morning as we remember Bob, as we grieve, and as we celebrate his life. In his memory, we will light the flame of our chalice, which is an ancient symbol of communion and equality, truth and love, and also a symbol of Bob's chosen faith, Unitarian Universalism. I'd like to invite his grandsons, Galen and Jason, to come forward to light our chalice and share some words at this time.
If we are lucky, we will all get a chance during our life to know someone who becomes for us an exemplar of living. And if we are really lucky, we will recognize how they ended up passing on some of their goodness to us, if we are lucky. But one thing is certain, no one, not one of us, entering this world can escape the cost of living. The price we pay is this: to live in this world, we must accept that someday we will have to die. To love what is alive, we must accept having to lose what we've made precious through our care. To be fully and fiercely human, we must accept having to be breakable and sometimes broken. When we stop to notice how their life gave us a path and a little light to see by, it encourages us to help carry that light forward. Though each of us carries forth this world a small flame, we know that the ability of that light to brighten the world depends on the many others who learn to walk with it in their hearts. We light this chalice today to honor the life and living of a truly bright light, Robert MacPhail.
Thank you, Jason and Galen. Again, welcome to all the family and friends to our service. It is hard to be here for this purpose, but it is good to remember and grieve and be together. We are here to remember Robert MacPhail, who was born February 17th, 1940, and died on May 18th, 2025, following several surgeries at the age of 85. Bob was a devoted husband and loving stepfather. He was an attentive and wise grandfather, or Papa Bob, Grandpa Bob. He was a beloved son and cousin and member of the infamous Chestnut Hill Gang. He was an accomplished and dedicated professional, a highly respected colleague who devoted his career to public service. Bob was a good neighbor and a treasured friend. For 2 decades, he was a member of the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Nevada and was a man of deep integrity. He was a traveler, an aficionado of thoroughbred horse racing and ballet and old movies and ice cream and college hockey and football. He was all this and so much more. And he will be deeply, deeply missed. When those we love leave us, there are simply no words that can lessen our grief. But what they were to us, that can never leave us. Their intelligence and caring, sense of humor, the dedication and certainty that we had of their love and loyalty, these are ours always. They're intermingled with our thoughts, blended with our lives. And so today we gather to celebrate. We gather to celebrate a remarkable life. We remind ourselves of how much Bob gave to us and the world, how much he contributed to our own love of life, our happiness, our ability to be secure and generous with the life we have. Of course, we also gather to honor grief. Whenever a cherished person dies, he leaves a place in our minds and hearts and lives that cannot be filled again in the same way. Grief can surprise us. For each one of us, it arrives on its own timetable and in its own ways. Sometimes it means tears or bittersweet memories. Sometimes a feeling of disbelief and emptiness. Sometimes it means relief that suffering is over for a loved one. Sometimes it brings anger or resentment. Sometimes it means railing against our helplessness or includes questions like what if or why, when the only questions we can really answer are, how shall we honor him, and what shall we do next? Sometimes grief means guilt or regret. If you have any regrets, please do not live with those regrets. Bob wouldn't want that, and regrets are simply love's way of reminding us that we can never do enough for those whom we love. So this morning, and also in the days to come, let there be both tears and laughter, and let's be glad that our lives and our community life was deepened and enriched by Bob, beyond the power of anything, even death, to destroy. It is our belief that love, that God are stronger than death, that never has a proud and determined spirit, and courage and loyalty touch the heart of a woman or man without creating something that lasts forever, beyond the boundaries of our own lives and thoughts. We are all part of the eternal, we are all connected, and as we know from experience, our relationships with those who've passed do continue on. They do remain with us. We need merely to look around at the faces gathered here and know about those who are listening online and search our own hearts to see just a small piece of the evidence of the meaning and value and connections that were part of Bob's life and legacy. We are here to testify to his legacy, to share our sadness, to celebrate all the goodness of his life, and to bless his memory. So I invite you to remember him just as he was. Those things that were good, the things he faced that were difficult, and those things that brought you deep and abiding joy. I invite us to enter now into a time of meditation and prayer and contemplation, each in their own way. Will you join with me? May we open our hearts this hour as the various faiths and philosophies which sustain us assure us of the presence of goodness, the value of life, the continuation of love far beyond death, the blessings of kindness in the face of struggle and loss, as we join here together today and with all who mourn. On this day, may we see beyond our normal sight to the truth that we are at home in the universe and what is temporal is part of the eternal. May we learn in this parting to dwell more constantly with the one who is gone, bringing him into ourselves as the companion of our silence and solitude, even as he was once our outward companion. May we find the courage to mourn and the courage to turn to one another and to believe in the goodness and beauty of life, even in the midst of grief. We hold in our hearts and prayers Bob's family, his wife Fran, his stepchildren Leslie, Eric, Carrie Ann, Michael, and Patrick, their partners and spouses, his 13 grandchildren whom he all loved deeply, his cousin Judy, his other cousins, all the extended family. We hold in our hearts and prayers his best friends from childhood and adulthood, dear co-workers, others close to him. We hope and pray that they may find comfort and strength from every source, from life and their faith, from good memories, from community and each other, from nature or God, and from all those who do the work of binding up the wounds of those who grieve, including all who are present today. May this be so, and amen. The family has chosen 3 readings to share with you today. I'd like to invite Leslie forward, followed by Aiden and Rachel. Leslie will be offering Gone From My Sight by Henry Van Dyke.
Thank you. Fran and I particularly like this one, and I hope you all will too. Just gonna pull it together. Okay, a parable of immortality. I am standing upon the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She is an object of beauty and strength, and I stand and watch until at last she hangs like a speck of white cloud, just where the sea and sky come down to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There she goes." Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side, and just as able to bear her load of living freight to the place of destination. Her diminished size is not in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, "There she goes," there are other eyes watching her coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout, "Here she comes."
Aiden will offer our next reading, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening.
Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep.
Thank you. Rachel is next, To Those Whom I Love and Those Who Love Me, by Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you, Fran. To those whom I love and those who love me, when I am gone, release me, let me go. I have so many things to see and do. You mustn't tie yourself to me with too many tears. But be thankful we had so many good years. I gave you my love, and you can only guess how much you've given me in happiness. I thank you for the love you have shown, but now it is time I traveled alone. So grieve for me a while, if you must. Then let your grief be comforted by trust. It is only for a while that we must part. So treasure the memories within your heart. I won't be far away, for life goes on. And if you need me, call and I will come. Though you can't see or touch me, I will be near. And if you listen with your heart, you'll hear all my love around you, soft and clear. And then, when you come this way alone, I'll greet you with a smile and a welcome home. I love you, Uncle Bob.
Thank you to our readers. I'd now like to invite Carrie Ann and Sam Wright and Megan to offer our music, a song from the musical Carousel.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky, and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown.
Thank you for that music. Today, we remember a unique and beloved life, a life of love and intelligence and curiosity and loyalty and dedication, wisdom, empathy, and kindness. A life of challenges and triumphs, laughter and tears. There simply are no words that can sum up the spirit of a person or the wholeness of their life. And so today, Bob's family members will share just some memories of him. Others will share stories downstairs at the reception. Some of you may decide to join in that storytelling later. But regardless, I hope that those of you who knew Bob will continue to share your memories and stories with the family, with Fran, in the weeks and months to come. The order of speakers will be slightly different than the order in the order of service. So to begin our remembrances, I'd like to invite Fran, Bob's wife, to come forward.
In resources. That was tough to follow. So thank you all for coming to celebrate Bob's life. I didn't think I would be able to do this, and a month went by and I realized I wanted to share our life together. And I think if I read it, I won't cry, but I'm finding out I probably will. And I thought I couldn't see you because I'm wearing 300 magnification. I could see all of you. As you all know, Bob was a wonderful gentleman, loved by so many people. He was an only child who was born in 1940 to older parents. Both his parents were 38 years old. He was Scottish-Canadian on his father's side, Inverness County, Nova Scotia, and Irish, County Clare on his mother's side. Bob has always said that he had a wonderful childhood. They lived in a neighborhood that gave him lifelong friends. These folks are the Chestnut Hill Gang. These young men and women stayed connected for all those years. In the later years, there'd be reunions at 10-year intervals, then the reunions were more frequent. He missed having siblings, but was rewarded with lifelong friendships. He attended Noble and Greenough School and then Dartmouth, where he majored in Russian studies. In 1977, he got a Master of Science in Taxation at Bentley College. There were 3 women in Bob's life whom he loved. First was Judy, his cousin, then his first wife, Signa, and her 2 children, Leslie and Eric. Then later, me and my 3 children, I don't know if that's correct, Carrie, Michael, and Patrick. Between the 2 families, he had 10 grandchildren, and just last year, my youngest son remarried, and he and Janie gave us 3 more wonderful grandchildren. Bob would always correct my grammar. Judy was like a sister to Bob. They walked to the beat of the same drum. She lived in Newton, and he was a large part of her family, Jennifer, Adrienne, Donnie, and Sarah. He always had to check the freezer in Judy's house to make sure there was ice cream. He was in good health. He had minor aches and pains, arthritis, and he had high blood pressure. He was very careful to take care of his health. Over time, he gave up alcohol, cigarettes, then cigars, next caffeine, and that meant full-strength coffee and Diet Coke, which he loved. Then he gave up his beloved Snyder's pretzels. That was the most recent. And thank God he never had to give up ice cream. After retirement in the early 2000s, we started driving out to the Las Vegas Valley during the winter. We bought a little house in an over 55 community. We stayed 6 months and then went back to Sanford, Maine for the summer and fall and up to Prince Edward Island for the month of August. We drove twice a year from New England to the Las Vegas Valley. And I should correct that to say Bob drove most of the time and I quilted. And that's 7,000 miles each year for 25 years. That's a lot of driving. I used to watch the gas prices, and then we stopped at $1.70. I'd take it back. We lived a quiet life. In Las Vegas, we would go to the Smith Center for the Symphony and other programs. We would meet up with friends for meals at their homes and occasionally at restaurants. In our early years, we volunteered at the Veterans Home in Boulder City and then at the nearby hospital in Henderson. We joined the Rock Hounds out of the Senior Center and had many hikes in the desert. We collected a few rocks. It was in Las Vegas that we joined the Unitarian Church. Here we found a wonderful community. We made lifelong friendships at this church, and through our becoming members, our daughter Carrie and her family also found this church, North Parish in North Andover. Bob loved to travel, and we did. We started with bike trips. We did 3 of those, Scotland, New Zealand, and Austria, and then we found cruises, and we went on many. We found a small cruise line we really liked. Australia was a favorite destination. We had a trip planned for 2026 for Japan with friends. He was really looking forward to that. One of our cruises took us around the Cape of Good Hope, and the other one through the Strait of Magellan. That was pretty exciting. You all know him well enough to know his love of old movies. We had to have Turner Classic Movies. He would watch so many of his old favorites over and over. He loved the musicals especially, Guys and Dolls, On the Town, Carousel, and anything with Fred Astaire in it. His favorite movie was Chinatown. Double Indemnity was another. Fargo. He loved the Coen brothers and Frances McDormand. Fred Astaire and Rita Hayworth in You Were Never Lovelier. There were so many. We had annual movie rituals. At Easter, we would watch Easter Parade. On Labor Day, it was Picnic. And at Christmas, it was Christmas Carol, only the Alastair Sim 1951 version. After Christmas Carol, we would listen to Dylan Thomas reciting A Child's Christmas in Wales. Then there's his love of music, classical and jazz, and some popular music. George Shearing, Marion McPartland, Bill Evans, Strayhorn, Art Tatum, or some names I remember, Alec Wilder, and George Strait and Willie Nelson. He got that from me. In both marriages, there were many trips to Saratoga Springs, New York, and for many decades, he was a fan of George Balanchine and the New York City Ballet. Bob also loved thoroughbred horse racing. There were side visits to the Saratoga track. He never bet a lot of money. It was all about choosing the winner. We spent about 17 years living in Sanford, Maine, in an old house. His father was commander of the Sanford Naval Air Station for a time during World War II. We took a motorcycle ride there, and we loved the old mill town. We had great neighbors. And it was in Sanford that we joined the Sanford Lions while we were there for the summer. And, we weren't really heavy lifting, but we showed up, and we have some wonderful friends that showed up today for us. Prince Edward Island, we went down east to PEI every summer for about 5 weeks for 21 years. An old farmhouse, many McDonald cousins, beautiful beaches, great seafood, new potatoes, blueberries, and my cousin Roland's large veggie garden. We didn't have internet or television. Bob had Sirius radio. He was a 40s child, so listening to the radio at night was familiar, and he loved it. Every day, someone would drop in, friends and family, have a cup of tea, or bring him an invitation to dinner or a musical event, or just a quick visit. These I call PEI days, and the day just sort of took its own pace. So this is all a prelude to say how much I miss him. We were always together. I miss knowing he's there. I miss hearing, oh, this is going to hurt. I miss hearing the evening news. We had to be home by 5:30 to catch the news. I miss bringing him his coffee in the morning. He loved to wake up to the smell of fresh coffee. I miss making his breakfast, scrambled eggs with spinach and homemade toast, pancakes with fruit another time. He loved oatmeal, and the all-time favorite, peanut butter and banana on good toast. I miss bringing him samples of what I was baking or cooking. He was my tester. I miss our cross-country road trips. This summer was to be our last drive across. He felt so strong after the heart surgery that we decided we would take the drive one more time, and he was getting ready to plan the drive. We took one short trip between the surgeries, the Palm Springs area. We wanted to see the Salton Sea and the Imperial Valley. Most importantly, we wanted to see Stan and Greg, great friends we made during our Indian Ocean COVID cruise. I miss watching and listening to him as he talked to kids and grandkids. He was a wonderful father and grandfather. He instructed the boys on golf. He taught Michael and Annie's sons ping pong. Our youngest grandson, Leo Robert, tried real hard to beat Bob. Some of you will remember that he was a great athlete. Our friend Bill will remember how unfazed Bob was when he got a hole-in-one. I missed his wisdom in talking to the grandkids about the college experience. He was such a great resource. I miss holding hands, especially at night when one of us was having trouble sleeping. I miss his hugs. He seemed to know when I needed a hug. The hugs diffused anxiety. He loved animals, dogs, cats, and horses. Your pets were our favorite pets. I keep finding more. There's his love of riding his motorcycle. He took this up at age 52, and he gave it up 10 years ago when he was in his 70s. It's too dangerous in the Las Vegas Valley. He loved living in Las Vegas, loved the fact that it was always open 24 hours a day. We went to the casinos for movies or a restaurant, an occasional $20 in Wheel of Fortune. He loved the weather. in the beginning the skies were always blue and the nearest cloud was in Elko. He did so well after the triple bypass heart surgery. It took him longer since he was older, but he got strong and he was walking up to 2 miles a day. At the final visit to the surgeon after the heart surgery, the doctor mentioned the carotid arteries. He said, we must take care of that. I asked that we wait until we got back in the fall. The doctor said no. Bob agreed. We were told there was a small risk. I think it was 2%. This was April 12th, and the surgery was April 14th. He died May 18th. His father died at age 50 of a massive stroke. His mother died at age 78, and it was, I don't know what it was, heart attack. It was some heart thing. My thought was that he would die in his sleep next to me, and I know I couldn't have persuaded him to wait. So thank you all for coming to celebrate this wonderful man. We lost a father, a father-in-law, a brother-in-law, a friend, a co-worker, a classmate, a grandfather, a good neighbor, and I lost my husband. My PEI family loved Bob, and they will miss him. The staff at the Appeal and Review Bureau at the Department of Revenue was his family, too. Nancy Hickey said they called Bob our office dad. Thank you all for being here with us, and thank you, North Parish and Reverend Lee, and my 2 sons. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. We'll hear from Alexandra or Alex Weatherby next, Bob's granddaughter.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Drew Weatherby, and I had the distinct pleasure of being Bob's granddaughter. Bob was very invested in my life and my brother Jax and our dog Yashu's. He was always coming to Chestnut Hill and playing with us. I have a lot of fond memories of having him drive me to theater rehearsals and going to Jack's games and going to Friendly's for dinner with Judy. I always liked the grilled cheese. Growing up, Bob took me to several shows as well at the Wang and Wilbur Theater in Boston, including Hairspray and the Nutcracker. And as I grew older and got to know Bob more, as an adult, I really learned to appreciate how adventurous he was, and in a lot of ways that inspired me with several of my travels and adventures too. When I graduated from high school, Bob told me about when he finished high school and took a trip out west that really inspired him, and he had hoped I would have a similar experience at Colorado College, which I did. I studied abroad in Tanzania when I was an undergraduate, and I called Bob and told him about Kilimanjaro, and he was moved to tears and so proud that I was able to have this once-in-a-lifetime experience, and it really meant so much to hear him say that. This past winter, my husband Heath and I took a trip to Chile and hiked a volcano and texted Bob and Fran about it, some photos, and Bob had told me he had been on that volcano and was just as mesmerized by it as Heath and I were. And that was really special that we had shared that and that it made an imprint on all of us. Additionally, as I had 2 treasured visits in Henderson, one of which Bob and I rode a helicopter over the Grand Canyon and saw the O show on the Vegas Strip, and another when Heath got to come as well, and I feel really blessed that Bob and Fran both got to know my husband Heath over ice cream in Henderson before we got married, and that both were able to come and be a part of our wedding. Bob told me that I seemed so happy with Heath, and that meant the world coming from someone who had loved me my whole life. I miss Bob immensely, and I know he's here with us today. He sent me a lot of signs, and I'll tell you all, I saw a loon this morning, and it did a loud call, and I really felt like that was Bob telling us he was here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We'll just have a moment of music at this time. Our next speakers will be Patrick Kilkelly, followed by Leslie Drew, and then Michael Kilkelly.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I am Patrick Kilkelly. I am Bob's youngest son. I was thinking, do I start with a laugh or end with a laugh? And I figured when I get up here, I'll figure what works best. I'm going to end with a laugh. So to start, I wanted to reflect on the concept of fatherhood when celebrating Bob's life. And to speak of fatherhood from my perspective, Bob came into my life when I was preteen, teenager, cocky, arrogant, kind of knew everything. And when Mom and Bob got married, I was 22 years old, traveling the world, again, cocky, arrogant, thought I knew everything. As I got to know Bob throughout my young adult life and throughout his life, it was kind of a slow start. And I say that in the kindest way because I felt that getting to know Bob was a little difficult because there was so much going on in my life. And when I would see Bob, spend time with Bob, we would share a passion for movies, for food. We would do the things that were enjoyable to he and I and to all of us. But emotionally, I didn't quite get the connection. Felt that Bob, being Bob, as we all know him, is very reserved, very classy, very respectful, very quick with the wit. And that when you started to unpack him a little bit and feel, wow, I gotta watch myself around him because he'll get you. I learned to respect him in a way that soon grew to love. And I think I learned to respect him most, and here comes the one laugh, when he quoted Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction as one of his favorite movie quotes, "That is a tasty burger." And I said, wow, this guy's great. I can really sit with him, we can enjoy a laugh. And watching how he loved Mom, and how he loved my kids, and especially as we grew into adulthood and my life started to take on more of an adult shape. And when I met Janie, and Janie and I met, when I introduced Janie to Bob and saw how they connected, I realized that Bob was opening up more and more to me and to us. And what I want to reflect on in terms of fatherhood is that, from my perspective, coming into Bob's life, I looked at it as, Bob, how do I incorporate Bob into my life? But Bob was incorporating us all into his life and welcoming us all into his life. And we got to experience that life with him in such a special way. Janie and I got married last year, and I now have the beautiful experience of getting to know and love 3 cocky, arrogant, beautiful young adult children, and incorporating them into my life in a way that Bob did for Michael, Carrie, and I. So to end it on what does fatherhood mean for me, it's to be able to have the beautiful experience of witnessing how somebody lives their life, and to use that as a template and example for how to live your own life. So Bob gave that to me, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So, Carrie, Michael, and I lost Michael, our father, in 2009, and we celebrated him in his life, and today we celebrate Bob, our father, because he's that. And I said I'd end on a laugh. So, a week before he passed, I was in Nevada with Mom, dealing with a lot of the logistics around medical and healthcare, and getting him to one facility to another. And this was around the time of the papal conclave in the Vatican. And there was a big, beautiful TV in the room where Bob was resting, and we were watching the news. And people were coming and going, nurses, doctors, everyone. And every person who came into the room, Bob would say, "Excuse me, what's your name? Are you Catholic? You could be the Pope." He was picking odds on who would be the Pope, and he wanted his horse to win. So he wanted to stack the deck, and that was Bob to the very end. He always had that wit, he always had that heart and that humor. And we miss it terribly. Thank you.
Leslie, would you like to come forward?
One of my earliest vivid memories of Bob involved naming my new kitten, Bravo, after him. That was the highest honor I could bestow on Bob when I was in 3rd grade. We had a lot of funny pet names, like Putter and B&W Kitty. Remember? And odd nicknames for all of us, too, over the years. One of mine was Les Lerf. Got shortened to Lerf at some point. I don't even think John and our kids have even heard that one. And I think it was wise not to carry that one forward into adulthood. I'm sure Bob's favorite nickname was PG, short for Heart of Pure Gold. But to all of us, he simply preferred B, the letter B, which is how he continued to sign many of his cards and emails to me until recently. My kids still call me Munsters at times, as in that old campy TV show. Hearing this name triggers the deep connection that Bob and I, and apparently many of you, shared through books, movies, and television series. Bob and I were always discussing reading, viewing, and listening suggestions too, thanks to Audible. The books James and Horse were some recent favorites. One better in book form, one better on Audible, we both agree. Last winter, Bob departed from his typical conversations about sports with my husband John and shared with him a long list of film noir favorites. The Maltese Falcon, Postman Always Rings Twice, Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard, and The Third Man. We had seen most of them, but it was fun to revisit a few through Bob's lens. He was always happy to share his vast knowledge of trivia about classic movies and the golden age of Hollywood. Several years ago, after discussing with Bob an article about the novel The Great Gatsby and its relevance today, Bob surprised me by later sending me a book titled So We Read On, How the Great Gatsby Came to Be and Why It Matters. This was just one of his many ways of always showing me how much I mattered to him. As an English major at our shared alma mater, I could often be found laboring over a paper on a school break. Bob would pass me slumped at my electric typewriter when the keys weren't clacking and say with a sly grin, "In conclusion." Remember that one? Yeah. This evolved into a silly mantra that we continued to recite together decades later. It was a dark and stormy night. Call me Ishmael. It was the best of times and the worst of times. And of course, in conclusion. These phrases all appeared in my mind again as I wrote this tribute yesterday. Fueled by our mutual love of literature and film, Bob and I also enjoyed an open-ended conversation over the years about what places and times we would have liked to have lived in. A number of options were considered, but we always came back to Paris in the 1920s. how incredible it would have been to have lived there in the exciting cultural watershed days of Hemingway and Fitzgerald, immersed in the romance of the lost generation. In fact, it was such an appealing notion that Woody Allen made a movie about this premise in 2011, many years after we thought of it. Midnight in Paris, which Bob and I both loved. I like to think of Bob now time traveling and visiting the places we talked about exploring so frequently. Although there will never be an in conclusion when it comes to Bob, he lives on in our hearts forever. I will close with these few thoughts. Bob was a wonderful parent and grandparent, a generous and kind-hearted man who meant so much to me, John, Alex, Jack, and Heath. He was very active in our lives. Bob was deeply sorry to have to miss Alex's law school graduation. I'm glad Jack's fiancée, Kiki, met him, and he'll be missed at their upcoming wedding. Bob took great interest in Alex and Jack's accomplishments, traveling long distances to attend Jack's college football games and Alex's dance recitals, and later taking great interest in their careers in law, investment banking, and private equity. He frequently told me and John how proud he was of them. The last time I spoke with Bob, he struggled to articulate his thoughts, and I couldn't understand much of what he said, aside from what day should he arrive for our annual Father's Day weekend celebration. I gave him the date, though we had spoken months earlier about how he and Fran would not be returning east for the summer while he recovered. I am happy that seeing us was one of the very last thoughts he shared with me the very last time I spoke with him. I miss Bob dearly, but take comfort in the myriad memories of him I will always treasure. I know Bob would want today to be a joyous occasion for all, despite the sadness. When I flipped through the book yesterday that Bob had sent me, my eyes fell upon this quote from The Great Gatsby. Life starts all over again when it gets crisp in the fall. A message from Bob, I believe, about the importance of moving forward from grief and living our best lives. We're grateful to have shared your life on this earth, Bob. We love you, B.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Michael will be next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Kilkelly. I am Bob's stepson, and I am Fran's, so she says, favorite middle son. And what I wanted to do this morning is just share 3 words that come to mind when I think about Bob. And those words are curiosity, competition, and composure. So one thing that I really always loved about Bob was his curiosity. He was curious about the world. He was curious about people. And if I hadn't seen him for a while, we'd spend the first half hour just asking me questions. What are you doing? How are the kids? How's work? What's going on outside in the world? And I wouldn't get a chance to ask him, but eventually I would. But he was also so curious about the world as well, about movies, about the papal, selection process. And I'm curious here, how many of you ever received a newspaper clipping or a book or a movie recommendation from Bob? Right, so I would get a letter in the mail after something we had just talked about, some obscure 1930s architect or something like that, and I would recognize the handwriting. Bob had very distinct handwriting, and I would know inside was some newspaper clipping of something that we had talked about maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and it was always a treasure to get there. It's, the Times, New Yorker, the Record Sun Journal. Am I getting that right for Las Vegas? But it was great to receive that because he cared about me. That was a demonstration of it, and just of his general interest in everything. Now, the second word is competition, and as has been mentioned, Bob loves sports. And he loved sports, but he was also a lover of sport in all its various shapes and sizes, whether it was horse racing, whether it was college hockey, whether it was his grandson Jack's football, or much more recently, Connecticut high school soccer. And Bob would often accompany me to my boys' soccer games, and he wasn't, or hadn't been up to that point, a big soccer fan. The offsides rule really flummoxed him for a while, but he stuck with it, and then we would start to have conversations about that. How's the team gonna be? Is Farmington any good this year? What's gonna happen? And so I loved having that time with Bob in the stands watching a game. Now, I never really thought of Bob as a competitive person, but he was. And I didn't know this until he got us a ping pong table. And he said, hey, you guys really need to learn how to play ping pong. So I'm gonna get you a table. So the table arrives, we set it up. The boys and I, we have a few months before he shows up for the summer, and we think we're getting good. Like, we're playing ping pong a lot. We're getting good. And we're out there every night playing ping pong. And then Bob shows up. And he has a ping pong case, so he gets there, takes his paddle, a very expensive paddle, out of the case, and proceeds to wipe the floor with us. Like, absolutely demolishes us. Leo, maybe you got a game on him. I never beat him at all. And the thing I love about Bob in sports is he was very, very low-key about it. And it makes me think about sort of the saying about Irish diplomacy, and that's the ability to tell somebody to go to hell so that they actually look forward to the trip. So with Bob, that was his way with sports. He would beat you so bad that you actually looked forward to it, and you actually felt pretty good after he was done. And so that just love of sport, but not necessarily to beat somebody or to win. It was just a love of the game. And that brings me to my third word, and that's composure. As those of us who have known Bob, Patrick, you had said, he was dignified, he was urbane, he was generally unflappable. And that was in the instances when you would expect it. Like, if you needed somebody to be there and say the right thing and do the right thing, that was Bob. But that was also in the times when it was not expected, or when it would be okay to sort of let go a little bit. Bob stayed to character, stayed true to himself. And this reminds me of one of my favorite stories or memories of Bob. And so we used to live in California, and we would often go to Las Vegas. And I think Andrea and I had mentioned, we'd never been to a casino buffet before. And so Mom and Bob, they said, we'll take you to the Bellagio. They have a great buffet, and they do have a great buffet. So we're there getting our plate. I'm standing with Bob, and we're walking around the food stations. And we come to the sushi station, and Bob's like, I don't care for sushi. I don't want any sushi. But he proceeds to grab the biggest scoop of wasabi I have ever seen. And if you've had it, you really only need a teaspoon, like a pea-sized bit of wasabi. That's all. That's adequate. That's fine. So imagine my surprise when we get back to the table. We sit. Bob takes a spoonful of wasabi and proceeds to put it in his mouth. And so as I'm about to say, no, he erupts in this unbelievable noise of shock and anguish as the horseradish of the wasabi sinks in. And he takes a moment, he gathers himself, his eyes are streaming, his nose is probably running, and he looks over at me and he says, well, that wasn't guacamole. And that was Bob to a T. He kept going, he continued his lunch. He probably couldn't taste anything for the next 2 or 3 weeks, honestly. But that was Bob. He kept going. And that if there was any opportunity or a moment when he could really let down, he didn't. So I like to think that, our 3 lessons that we can all take from Bob, and that maybe, hopefully, he would want us to take, are stay curious, stay in the game, and keep your composure. Even if you just ate a mouthful of wasabi. All right. Thank you.
Well, We'll have a moment of music, and then Rachel and Peter will share their words.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel, or as Bob calls me, his favorite niece. It wasn't hard, universe of one. I would joke back to him that he is my favorite uncle, although I have several. But that was easy. Bob was easy to have as a favorite uncle. I didn't write anything down. I decided to wing it because I feel like I've already had the things that I wanted to say have actually kind of come up today. And Fran and I were talking a week ago, last Saturday, about the things I was going to say today. And there's two themes. Showing up, and we've heard so much about Bob showing up. Showing up for his family, his friends, his coworkers. He's worn many hats over many years. We have all shown up today for Bob because Bob showed up for us. He showed up literally in all the places he went with us, and he showed up figuratively in the love he gave to us. And so that's one of the things I really was thinking a lot about. And the other, and we've talked about all of the different loves of Bob's life in terms of interests, wonder. Bob embraced, and I feel like this is, of all the things I celebrate of Bob that I carry too, is a sense of wonder. He loved a slice of beautiful bread. I remember being with Fran and Bob in Henderson when bread was baking, and the wonder of a piece of bread. Being at the Desert Botanical Garden in Phoenix, where I live, and that's another wonder that Bob and I shared, is the Southwest, New Englanders who found the desert to be beautiful. But he found wonder in music, in dance, in, of all things, hockey. He found wonder in small things and large animals, the sky. And I feel like that is what I take today, and I'm really thinking a lot about his sense of wonder. And it is going slow enough and being present enough to feel that wonder. And he would come to my house, and I'm a bird lover. I feed birds. I have a bird feeder that has lovebirds that are actually from Africa that were let out of people's in the Metro Phoenix. And so we have these cute little lovebirds that come to the feeder, but then we have pigeons. I love pigeons. Bob would come with Fran, and they would be sitting outside in this idyllic backyard, and I'm feeding pigeons. And Bob didn't seem to quite grasp it, but I think he grasps my love of all living things. So even the pigeons, I think, were okay for Bob. I hope. But in closing, that is why I am really glad to show up for Bob. I'm glad we were here to show up for Bob. And I'm going to introduce my dad, his longest friend from childhood. Uncle Bob would have been Uncle Bob regardless of whether he'd married into the Norstrand family. And that is another wonderful example of showing up, the long, long friendships that Bob carried, and his ability to embrace new people along the way. And so that's what I'm thinking about today. And it's really good to be here with all of you.
Should get near the mic, I suppose, huh? Bob came into my life 71 years ago this month, 1954. We both enrolled as day students at Noble and Greenough School in the 9th grade. Noble and Greenough is in Dedham, Massachusetts. We met the first week on the football field during tryouts when the coaches would assess our abilities. And one of the first exercises was to line up the players and form an alley. I was skinny and fast, and running that gauntlet, I could elude all defenders except one. Bob MacPhail nailed me every single time. And I knew right away that I wanted him as a teammate. The school had this rigid formula to decide whether you were a junior or a senior. Bob was taller, heavier, and 5 months older. So he ended up being a senior, and I ended up being the captain of the junior team. So we weren't teammates yet. He played hockey, I played basketball, we weren't teammates. And we didn't become teammates until our sophomore year when we both played on the varsity baseball team for 3 years. Bob was a pitcher, I was a shortstop. And we have one memorable game when Bob is on the mound against Dedham High School. In the top of the first inning, I think I set a major league record by making 4 errors on 4 straight ground balls. Bob stepped off the mound, looked over at me. We both shrugged and started laughing. We were laughing hysterically, and that's what teammates do. Happily, I scored the tying run in the bottom of the first inning. We won the game, so he still spoke to me. The last 2 years at Nobles, we were roommates in the round room. We became boarders with Peter Wadsworth and Dick Whiteley, both of whom were on the wrestling team. One night, 3 underclassmen who were also on the wrestling team came charging in and took on Peter, Dick, and I. And Bob sat in his bed reading and studying, didn't move. There's chaos going on around him. And within a few minutes, the seniors had the other ones pinned on the floor right by his bed. He looked up, looked around, said, "Good work." Bob was the most studious of all of the foursome in that room. He played the lead role in the school play as a character who smoked. The teacher noted that he looked way too comfortable smoking. And sure enough, a week later, Bob and I were excused from the last baseball game because somebody had spotted us smoking in the woods. He and I were both accepted to Yale and Dartmouth. We sat in Bob's car, Bob's mother's Buick Riviera. I remember the car, it's a beautiful car. We flipped a coin to decide where to go. Bob's father had been an All-American quarterback on the 1925 Dartmouth National Championship football team. You probably won't see another Dartmouth National Champion football team. My father had been the secretary of the class of 1926 for at least 10 years. Yale didn't have a chance. At Dartmouth, Bob and I were roommates for several years and members of the same fraternity, where I am sorry to report alcohol was delivered sometimes. On a bitter cold night in November of our freshman year, we trudged over to the Webster Hall to hear Robert Frost read his poetry. A lifetime memory for each of us. We both managed to flunk biology. Somebody tried to teach us something about spiral helix and DNA, and we had no clue. But we both had the good sense to go to Boston College summer school, get A's, and restore order to our GPA so that we ended up, both of us, going to graduate school. Bob married my sister in the late 60s, becoming stepfather to her two preteen children. They had a beautiful home in West Newton, which was the gathering point for many holiday feasts and birthday feasts and parties. He was active in the community, serving on the board of the All-Newton Music School and as treasurer. He was also active in the West Newton Tennis Club, where many of us had spirited tennis matches, including our pianist Megan Henderson, my sister, my Bob, myself, and many others. My sister died 30 years ago, over 10 years after her son Eric had a major mental health break. This illness struck just as he had received his PhD from MIT, and it was a shock to everyone and a life-altering experience. After my sister's death, Bob stayed in the house with Eric until he eventually moved to Florida, taking care of her. Throughout Eric's life, Bob was a constant presence in his life, joining me in comforting, commiserating, and caring for him regularly in the last 12 years, 10 or 12 years. He regularly traveled up to Boston to visit him in hospitals or at his nursing home. Bob brought many wonderful people into my life, including David Lamb, Ray Brown, Helen Streeter, and her sisters, Gay Ayers. And that gang became the Chestnut Hill Gang, which at age 50 celebrated our first reunion, and we kept celebrating them every 10 years or so, a time of friendship, survival milestones, and laughing until tears ran. Bob was a rabid movie fan and scholar throughout his life. He immediately welcomed into his universe my bride, now of 31 years, Kathy Tallman, and was thrilled when she became the CEO of the Coolidge Corner Theater. He often sent ideas for programming, series, and films, and I know he would be exceptionally happy that right now Kathy is in Toronto at the Toronto International Film Festival, hopefully watching this on Zoom. Together we enjoyed lots of music, hearing Diana Krall, Elton John, George Shearing, among others, and actually catching Joe Williams, the amazing former singer of the Count Basie Band, when he tripped off the Regatta Bar stage and literally landed in our laps. He was a big man, and he commented, "I'm usually drunk when this happens." We traveled together, including bike trips in Sweden and New Zealand and trips to national parks, and we were forever visiting each other either in Nevada or Maine. Bob was my best friend for over 7 years. From adolescence, escapades I will not share here, to senior status. Throughout our adult lives, we shared and counseled each other on our various highs and lows, joys and sorrows, including family, sports, politics, cultural events, and of course, health. Kathy and I were fortunate to join Fran and Carrie to be with him during his last moments. The attending nurse told us that he could still hear us, and Kathy suggested I read a poem. By sheer chance, or was it? Stopping by woods on a snowy evening popped up on my phone. It was one of the poems that Robert Frost had read when we were freshmen. I was reading it as I held his hand, and he peacefully slipped away. I forgot one whole section here. I'm sorry. The best friend that he brought into our lives, sitting right here, Frances McDonald MacPhail, who may be a distant cousin because she discovered in my family tree that there's a McDonald out there somewhere. And she insisted that I get a McDonald plaid when I was in Edinburgh last year. Rest in peace, dear Bob. You were the absolute best friend and teammate ever. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep.
Thank you, everyone, for those just beautiful, beautiful stories and remembrances. I hope they sustain all of us in the days to come as we remember the ways that Bob's life blessed us and will continue to be a blessing. As we near the end of our service, I'd like to announce that everyone's warmly welcome to a reception downstairs in our hall downstairs. There will be a few more remembrances from Bob's colleagues and family members. To reach the hall, there are stairs through the back of the sanctuary, and there's an elevator through this door. You just have to follow the U around to get to the hall downstairs. We do have a guest book in the entryway, so those leaving that way, we encourage you to sign the guest book, and we will also bring that downstairs to the reception hall. I'd like to now invite Bob's grandson, Owen Kilkelly, to come forward and read the words to extinguish the chalice before we close our service with meditation, music, and the ringing of a bell by Bob's grandsons, Seamus and Leo Robert.
At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each one of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. We extinguish this chalice, but carry forth the light and spirit of Robert MacPhail with love into the world.
Will you join me in closing meditation and prayer? Spirit of life, of abundant love, be with us and among us on this day and in days to come, as we give thanks for the life and legacy of Robert MacPhail. We give thanks for his life, his caring and kindness, his curiosity and humor, his love of friends and family, his vital humanity. We give thanks for all the ways he used his intelligence to improve and co-create our common world, making it a better place to live and to love. We are glad he lived among us, as whomever we have known and loved becomes part of us forever. May he rest now in peace, as to our hearts' remembering and abiding love, we commend his spirit. The work is now left to us, the living, to carry forth the joy and love of the one who's been taken from us. May we trust in love that abides. May we keep before ourselves the good memories and the knowledge that what we have been given is far more than can ever be taken away. Spirit of life, of love, of God, be with us and with all those in pain, grief, or sorrow. May we find a way through our pain and sorrow. May we remember with gratitude the joys of love and life as Bob would wish. May we find our way to that peace which passes all understanding. May this be so, and amen. And as we go to return to our daily lives, I offer this Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hands. Amen.
Thank you.